Hi, and welcome to Soul and Science, a podcast on uniting Western psychology with Eastern wisdom. My name is Nyana, and I'm a psychotherapist residing in India and in conversation with Ardaas ji, who is an international trainer in yogic wisdom, and he is from Portugal. We invite you to embark on a profound exploration of the human journey with us. We integrate scientific insights into the mind with Eastern wisdom on life's polarities, paradoxes, and boundless nature to uncover a deeper understanding of our existence. Season 1, we begin with the exploration of relationships and the part that leads back to the self. Why relationships? We are constantly engaging in relationships with everything around us, from people to our environment. While we usually focus on relationships between two people, the most profound relationship we have is with ourselves. How many of us are truly aware of this relationship we have? Do we nurture it, trust, love, and respect it? Or are we living in fear and rejection of self, waiting to be validated externally? So join us as we go deep dive into the relationship with our mind, our body, and our spirit. Hello and welcome everyone to Soul and Science. Today, our topic of our podcast is a topic that I really feel resonates with me, is something that I think about a lot. And the conversation we're having today is around power. And the conversation is around power over versus power within, and the experience of power from different perspectives, both psychology and from a yogic perspective. And Ardaas ji and I was just beginning to talk about uh, epidemiology of
Etymology.
etymology
Yeah.
of words, and we went into the word power. He said loves to begin that way. So I'm going to ask Ardaas ji to share what we uh, saw and read and some of the thoughts that showed up around that, and how something like that can take us into a deep inquiry around this word.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the podcast. And yes, we tend to start with a definition, and sometimes we just take the definition of a word by a dictionary. But when I look for definitions, I always try to look for the etymology as well, because language has been corrupted over the years, and we tend to utilize words in a way that is not necessarily how it was meant. And knowing where the word comes from can give us a lot of clues. So I looked for power, and here in the online etymology dictionary says that power is ability to act or do something,
Mm,
strength, vigor, and might. And there is another one: efficacy, control, mastery, lordship, dominion, ability or right to command or control. And if we look at the etymology of this meaning, this would come from Latin potere, which is where the Spanish comes from, poder. Literally in the Spanish would mean to be able to do something, puedes hacer esto? Can you do that? Are you able to do that thing? So ability, it comes back to ability. And if we look even farther back, we will go to the Proto-Indo-European, the same root that is common to the Indian languages and the European languages, so uniting both of us.
mm,
And that would be, the root is poti, and that would literally mean powerful or Lord.
mm,
And I think that's very significant, uh, that the origin of the word means Lord, because it's coming back to divinity. And I was just considering how in the old times you would expect that the one who is ruling is the one who has some special communion with God or some special message that we cannot access God directly, but our Lord, we could even use the same word like our Lord, like we use it for God, but we also use it for the nobility
yeah.
who is supposed to be able to give us these laws. We were talking about laws the other day, and how there's human laws and there is divine law and human truth and divine truth. We were talking about this on the podcast episode on truth. And so one would expect that the ones who are guiding a country now, very relevant topic when we are coming right out of the American elections,
Mhm.
very sensitive topic as well.
Yes.
But you would hope that those who are in power are those who are closer to God, let's say, closer to having some divine understanding. Now, of course, that was the olden times. That has changed a lot nowadays. But it's interesting that's where the etymology of the word takes us to something divine, already something spiritual.
Yeah. And that's such a, I almost noticed like a shift in me when you said there's something divine, that in some ways our understanding of power has moved so far away from its original intent of what it meant. Like you said, sometimes its original intent is lost. Um, and when you bring it back to divinity, and you think of power in that sense that it is something divine, and it's closer to divinity, that changes the way you're experiencing power. Because otherwise, if we look at power, and I looked at the dictionary definition and what
Mm.
psychology looks at as power, the dictionary definition is the ability or capacity to do something or act in a particular way. So it relates a lot more to an inner experience, an inner volition, an inner agency. And most of us, I think, when we look at the word power, it comes today with a lot more connotations.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it in the with the inner concept,
Yeah.
you could say that your ability to do something that's God given. For those who believe in God, they will say, well, my gifts, my higher attributes, those things which I have been born, with these capacities to do something, these natural gifts in me, they are given by God. No? So that there would be a connection to something divine. And that would also connect in the way that, well, who am I to say what I can and what I cannot do? If there's this argument
Mm,
that if God didn't want this to happen, it wouldn't happen.
mm,
So if it's happening, is because God wants it. And
mm.
then we come back to the concept of free will. Then, okay, so does that mean that everything is written down and everything is God's will, and then we don't have any will, or do we actually have some will? So we are coming back to this concept of free will that we were talking a few episodes back.
Absolutely. On fate and destiny and free will and choice, which brings it
Yes,
back
that's right.
to
Yeah.
the two components of choice and truth.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's something that's been like sitting with me going deeper, especially from the perspective of psychology. When I was looking at it, that psychology looks at it as a neutral tool that you can use for good or not good. For
Power, you mean?
yeah, it looks
Right.
at it as a neutral tool.
Right.
Interestingly,
Right.
right? And then, of course, we've got all these connotations over time. And then it took me into how we use power. And you were talking about that earlier before we came on about influence, and that we can use it to influence, or power can also be used as coercion. And we were talking about the definitions of that. And influence is the ability to encourage. And the word encourage is very interesting to me because encourage is to put courage into someone. You're not
And
taking,
and
yeah,
and the word courage comes from cor, which is heart.
heart. Yeah, yeah. And so you're essentially saying the ability to, if I were to use it to get someone to operate from their heart, to follow their heart, sort of, right? That if it's landing for me, if it feels like it's my truth, and then I am providing some space and ability to encourage for you to suggest that you do this, versus compulsion or coercion, which is when you force someone else to do something out of a space of command. right? And that's so interesting for us in our work of trauma, especially because the lens that we look at post a trauma event is not, I wouldn't say it's across the board, but predominantly a sense of powerlessness and helplessness that sets in, right? And then that becomes the nature of the narrative, the psyche, the way I operate and show up in this world, whether the my ability to influence my life or anything else is narrowed down, affected, and I wouldn't say it's taken away because it always exists, but I feel like I've given that away, or I feel that that
Yes.
was taken away from me,
No,
or
it's more like we give it away. Yes, we
yeah.
allow it to. We if it's taken away, is we allow it to be taken away from us in some way.
And maybe in that, and that's I think an interesting thing because in a lot, and when you look at different kinds of traumas, for example, if it's a young child with abuse, how do you say that I willingly gave it away? Did I have a choice in that? It was about my safety, right? And it comes back to trauma being a wound, but also if I'm at threat, in that moment, what can I do? Right? And that whole conversation around bringing a person back to their identity of not powerlessness, right? But healing that identity of what happened to me, the victim. I've been in that powerlessness that sets in with those identities. Um, to bring it back to say that you still have the ability to influence change, which is what philosophy and a lot of things define power as, is that you still have the inherent ability to create change. So I'm just
Yes, I'm
wondering.
thinking that uh, we. I mean, how much do we really control, right? Because if we are talking about my ability to bring some sort of changes, in a way, an attempt to control things around me, the environment, or what is happening to me, or what is happening around me, and I can see how there's always these two sides to the coin. So if we are talking about powerlessness, on one side, yes, you may have been giving it away, or maybe it was taken away from you. But at the same time, this feeling of powerlessness, there is also a gift in it. There's always a karmic and a dharmic side to everything. There's always a light and a dark.
Mm,
And I believe that a lot of the when I see at people who are exerting very little influence in their environments, is generally people who are very humble.
mm,
Very often I can see this, that it comes from a place of humility and feeling small and feeling that they don't want to create any effect around them. They don't want to create ripples, and they want to live peacefully and just let me be, in a way. And that can be, again, there's the light and there's a dark to that. There's one dark, which is that they make themselves so small that they don't value themselves, they don't value their feelings, their opinions, their decisions, and so other people also don't value them, and then they end up powerless and exerting um, no capacity to change their life, because everything is happening to them, because they
mm,
are not doing anything, so that everything is happening to them. And that's vicious. That's
mm.
a vicious attitude that is going to just, like a circle, that is going to create more of that. But within that, there is a seed of humility, of being simple, of being small, and appreciating, there's some greatness in the world, and not needing to do and changing the world, which is um, stems from a humility.
Mm,
Now, that's a virtue. So when you bring this humility and the virus of humiliation into the realm of power, then okay, I'm powerless. But even the very powerless, even the very word, the same word, powerless, can be lived as a virtue or a virus,
mm,
because I can see how a devout religious person will take this aspect of it's all your will, God, whatever is your will,
Mm,
and I'm just an instrument for you, and you, if you want to act through me, you'll act through me, but it's not me. And
mm,
that's a certain powerlessness. Like they are not doing anything, they're just letting whatever has to manifest, or feeling that you cannot change the world, so why even try it, and what's the point of it all, and then where am I going to do, is this my life, is life this, just being in a hole and not being able to change anything? That's a different kind of powerlessness. And
mm.
yet that's the thing. So the line where we cross from the dark to the light, or to the light to the dark, is very, very thin, but we should delineate more clearly this line.
Can you explain that a little more? And you're saying the line of
Yes.
whether it's the light side or the dark side.
All right. I don't know, for some reason is coming to me this book. What's the name? Crime and Punishment by
Mm.
Dostoevsky,
Dostoevsky, yeah.
right? And the whole idea of the book is this guy who is asking himself, can I be a wolf?
Mm,
There's wolves and there's sheep. Can I be a wolf? Am I capable of being a wolf? Which is a way of asking himself, do I have power? Can I um, gather my own power? Can I take my own power? I mean, there is a number of consequences that are quite terrible as a result of him taking the power, and he takes it for dubious reasons. But the question is that, do we take the power or do we not take the power? And let's put it like this: there is some powerful agencies in this world. There's
mm,
some powerful forces who are directing us and controlling us and leading society in a particular direction. And we can feel those forces, but they are very in the shadow. No, so we say, the most powerful man on earth is the one who we don't know about him, right? It's not the ones who appear in the list of the top 5 richest men, or the top 5 companies or whatever. It's not about that. It's about, if you really have power, nobody knows about you. You are, the hidden hand, and you only see the puppets. So there is some power in the world. And of course, there is light power and there is dark power. There is also light forces who are also hidden. And from the outside, you will not even notice. And you will go maybe to a gurudwara or a church or a chapel or whatever. You go there, and there's some people praying, and you will not notice, but there's this one old man in the back, or this old woman, very quiet, very soft, just chanting her prayers. And she is actually a saint that is right there illuminating and bringing light to the whole church. So she's not doing much, apparently, but she's exerting incredible influence. She's bringing all this light into that realm, and everybody goes to that church and they feel, what a wonderful church. It's magnificent. I feel so well after coming here. They didn't notice it's the little old lady in the back, right? That is not even speaking. So who has power? We don't always see it from the outside.
mm,
And these hidden forces that are directing uh, this society make it so as well, so that we believe we cannot change the world.
mm,
So the first thing that is designed, those forces who want to control what is happening, is make it so they feel powerless, make it so that people don't have any power. And one very powerful way, if you allow me the word, to do this, is to make people believe that power is evil.
mm.
So if you go to this sentence, power corrupts, and
Yeah.
absolute power corrupts absolutely. Many people who hold goodness in their hearts and they want the best for everyone, they will say, then if power corrupts, I don't want to know anything about power, so I don't want any power. If power means influence on the others, and that's going to have consequences, and maybe I will accumulate karma, and then maybe that will have, I don't want anything about influence. So a lot of people with a good heart, they will pull back, and they will say, I will not take power just in case I get corrupted.
Mm,
So what happens through that is that Listen, this is very important. Eh?
Mm.
If those who are more aware, those who are more awake, those who value morality and consciousness, and they have a spiritual alignment and an ideal of how to be a good human being, being in service of the others. If these people don't take the power, who are they leaving the power to? Those who are not afraid to be corrupt, those who don't care about the heart, those who don't care about the some spiritual alignment. So if we are in trouble, if we find ourselves in a situation in the society where we think that things are going terribly wrong, well, the first thing how it goes wrong is by us. If and when I say us, anyone who is having any kind of a spiritual alignment and they want the best for everyone, by choosing not to have any influence on others and not to take power. The moment that we are afraid of being corrupt and therefore we don't take any power, then we let power be corrupted much more easily. Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I I think what's interesting, there's a few things that you said that I quickly noted down to kind of pay attention to, which was this connotation of power being corrupt and evil. And so then you don't want to touch it because I don't want to be the one that I don't want to get corrupt and evil.
There is a dark side to it, so I don't want the dark side, so I'm not going to take it. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet it's an illusion, right? Because we all are inherently have power. Power to influence, power to act, power to choice. Um, the only difference is whether you're doing it from a state of unconsciousness or from a state of consciousness. Am I aware of the intent? And whether I am operating from a space of, and therefore I take responsibility and accountability for the power that I hold, right? Because somehow
Right.
feel that that has gone so far from looking at power as an individual within to somebody is in a position and power, they have power, I don't. So I don't therefore then have the power to say yes or the power to say no. I don't have the power of choice. I don't have the power of, and I'm not going into free will and things because we've talked about it in the past. But then we're looking at it only in the perspective of, okay, if that position of power is saying, then I submit and surrender and I do. And in that, I become choiceless and powerless, and then there is a part in you that gets frustrated and angry, right?
Right.
Because that is a part that's actually telling you like, hey, you're actually not powerless, you do have an opinion, you do have you know a experience around this. You may not agree with this, and that's something that your power within you is telling you to either voice or establish a boundary, or and that we're moving, we've sort of blinded or blocked ourselves from the ability to listen to that power within,
Yeah.
that I have the ability to influence at least my own yeses and nos, my own choices, my own ability to sit with um, my truth, right? Which my own thing is actually telling me from inside, this is not working for me. I don't like this, or this person is coming into. I don't agree, right? But when I start believing I'm powerless and they are powerful, I'm living in actually this illusion that I have no voice and say and an opportunity to influence at least my own choices and my truth. And I think that's something that really stayed with me or brought up for me when you were saying that about um, people when they don't want to take power. But the truth is that we all do have power, and we're influencing in every moment. We're using that power, whether it's the power of speech, the power of thought, right? The power of
Yeah.
act. It is power. You're influencing it. The only difference is whether you're doing it from a space of awareness and consciousness, or whether I'm doing it from conditioning and automatic patterns. Um,
Mhm.
and that,
Yeah, even when we allow ourselves to fall into a pattern, a karmic pattern, an addiction, or something that we want to remove from our life because it's damaging, it's toxic, and it's not helping, but then we allow ourselves to go back to that again, that's
mm,
also a power. We chose to allow ourselves to go back to that pattern again.
yeah. And I think that's such a core part of why I like wanted to have this conversation around power, especially when it comes from the space of psychology and trauma, is that when we experience trauma, somewhere the narrative, there is a shutdown of our consciousness because we're living possibly in the past, right? It's affected my body and my ability to be in the present, to fully therefore be present in the moment and make conscious choice. Therefore I'm living from this space of I'm not safe, there's danger, there's threat, and then my brain gets wired to see that in a certain way to keep me safe. And I was reading about where power came from and why is power inherent, and it was to meet our basic necessary for us to have to meet those basic survival needs. So that's from a trauma perspective. If my basic need for safety is violated, then I'm constantly living in that state. And so then somebody who's powerful has taken that, there's a belief that that was taken away from me, right? However, that's not, that can, nobody can ever take that away, right? You're still acting, we're still choosing, we're still doing. The only difference is today it's operating from a belief that I am powerless. But that's actually, not the truth. That is power. You just choose. It's just from a different. It's just operating from a belief system that says I'm powerless. And like you
It
said,
depends.
and
It
when
depends on how you live it, because you can, again, you can come back to the religious person who says, "I'm powerless. God has all the power, and I will just follow God's command." Who can?
Mhm,
So, but if you take it that way, if you can take it to that extreme, and it doesn't have to be karmic. But then if you do it in that way, you are in service. So whatever hukam comes, whatever command from God comes, then okay, I'm going to do that and I'm going to follow that command. And that implies that that person should be able to know what God wants,
mm,
right? So, and how do we know that, right? But if you take it in that direction, okay, I'm powerless, but what is the will? The will of God. Okay, I'm gonna go for the will of God. There is a lot of power in that, but they are not taking it. They are just channeling in a way that's not necessarily unhealthy. It's
mm,
just depending on how aligned they are and how much they are capable of listening to that command. But I want to come back to that one point. The very title of this podcast,
mm.
"Power Within versus Power Over," I think it was,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I want to point out one thing, that when we read something like this, many people will think, well, power within is good,
Mm,
to be powerful. Yeah, myself in my own life and change my own life. But power over, I don't want to touch that,
mm,
right? And I would like to demystify this. It's you cannot take power within yourself and not take the other.
mm,
And you cannot take the other without one. You cannot have an influence over the others if you don't have an influence over yourself. And you cannot choose to influence your life and not having an influence over others, because we're always examples for others. The moment that we change something in our life, that's going to have an influence in everyone around us. So to try to see that one is good, one is bad, that's going to create a lot of challenges later on, and it's not going to be a real power what you are grabbing, because I want power but then I don't want to influence others. Well, why not? What's the problem with influence, right? There is this resistance to that, to having an influence over everyone around us.
yeah. Sorry, did you finish
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
go?
yeah, go on. Yeah,
So I think I'm gonna come this particular piece from the place of more trauma and that
yeah.
aspect, which is um influence versus control and compulsion and force. And you
Control,
again,
compulsion, and
force,
force. Okay,
forcing,
sure.
right? And the fine thing between the recognition that there's one thing to influence when I have the power and I know that I can influence, and that is one thing, right? And again, the consciousness with which I am influencing, which again comes with the word courage. You're influencing a heart-centered, which isn't, which, like I said, is psychologist more neutral, versus when it becomes control, force, and compulsion, which can become more exploitative, right? And that, what we know, what I may be saying this more generally, so apologies if I am, is that there is a understanding that when I am not have control over myself, or power over my thoughts or my
Mm,
emotions or the
right,
ability to, then I want to control everything else around me,
right.
right? Like, you did this and therefore I'm angry.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, that fine thing that I thought that we could kind of maybe talk a little bit more of, because that, I think, is such a interesting dynamic of the human experience that we see, right?
Mm-hmm.
The less power I feel within in my ability to do that, the more I try to coerce and control and my environment, and that can be exploitative, abusive, and dangerous.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can see that a lot in self-centered people and narcissists who will try to make you believe that, it's your problem, it's your issue. If you're around them, and they will tell you what, if something is happening to them, they will tell you that it's about you. It's about you who is in the wrong, and you have to change that. And somebody who is humble, they will, well, oh, is it me really? Maybe it is. Should I? Right? And in the moment that we question whether we are noble or not, then we are giving power to that person who is trying to exert the control over us. So yes, I think we should focus it in both directions. We should focus it from the perspective of somebody who has been through trauma, and I know that's your main experience, and that's why you go into that field, because that's your expertise. And yes, and in some way, we have all experienced some form of trauma. We can say that, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't want to feed on the victim personality, right? So I don't want to give too much attention to that part of me who will feel powerless. So yes, absolutely. We should recognize that whatever happened when we were little, or when we were in that position, in that situation, and we had no control, and then we felt powerless, and that's not necessarily where we are now. And now we are adult beings, and we are conscious, and we can talk about it. We can see it from a different perspective and realize that we have power for the very beginning, at least, to change how we feel. Our emotions are in our power. Our,
Yeah.
our attitude is in our power. What happens with our mind is in our power. To think that we can control the whole world around us, that's just an illusion. It's false. It's not true. But can I control that thought? Yes, that we can control. So everything that is within our membrane, the happening in the body, and the emotions and the mind, all these, we have power over this. And if we are in a situation in which we feel that we've gone through some trauma, we're going to need to pass through a period of healing, and we're going to have to maybe go to therapy, and we're going to have to do a lot of things to change the narrative. Everything we have already been talking in this podcast, no, for the other episodes. And then we will have to come to a point where we feel reasonably well,
Mm.
reasonably healed within, that we already come into a position where, okay, now I feel relatively well. And I say it in this way so that we don't, so we, some people will think, well, until I'm fully healed, I'm not going to try to create anything in the world, in my life. Some
Mm.
people try to deal with everything from the past before moving on to the future. And I would say, no, deal with the minimum that you can on the past so that you can face the future. And then, going towards the future, if something from the past comes, then we deal with that, but always facing forward. And now the facing forward would be, okay, now that you've dealt enough, a little bit at least, with what's happening within, then let's deal with the without. No, and coming back to the title of the podcast, no, then you're gonna have this power over,
Mm.
and that's um, a natural consequence.
Mm.
Just the very fact that you were in a position of feeling a victim, and somebody felt they were abused or whatever happened in their history, and they were from a position of powerlessness, and they managed to change their life around in how they feel about themselves, how
Mm.
they think about themselves, and feeling good about their body, their emotions, their mind, their life. Just doing this change, which it took a lot of power within,
Mm.
that's already an incredible example for other people. And people who look at this person, they're gonna find them as a reference. They're gonna see, she could do it. Maybe I can do it too. So you're gonna have an influence. No, that person who goes through that change is gonna have an influence. So it's good to remove this feeling that, well, I don't want to influence others. Why not? Yes, we want to be conscious. Yes, we want to be responsible. Yes, we're going to take accountability for what happens. But why should I not want to be an influence on others? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Like I'm thinking about, you're a psychologist. You
Yeah.
have clients. When a client comes to your consultation, they are hoping to be influenced in the right direction, and they are paying you money for that. Right? They hope that, please help me. When they come to us for help, it's because they feel they cannot do it by themselves. In a way, they feel not enough power within, so
Yeah.
they hope that a little bit of your power, influence is a flow, right, will flow into themselves, so that they can utilize a little bit of your powers to help them change themselves, to find their own powers, so that the change is sustainable without the need to go to a psychologist all the time, right? So maybe they will come to a few sessions, and the aim of the psychology or the therapy should always be healing. So not how long can I keep this client with me so that I can make more money, but
Yeah.
can I make them be self-sufficient in 6 sessions or 10 sessions or 1 session, who knows? So they are borrowing your power until they have enough power. Now go and have an influence on others. So
Yeah.
that's why, I love teaching teachers. I'm not teacher trainer, because that's when you stop seeing a student and you start seeing a teacher. And I think there is a radical difference from teaching classes to students to teaching to teachers.
Mm.
That's the thing of seeing, how can I help you to empower yourself so that you can be an influence on others.
Right. Yeah. And that's such an interesting, because while you were talking and saying that, my understanding of power kind of shifted. That's really interesting. As you were talking about influence, that yes, what happens when a client comes in, they're taking your power and your energy, right? And come to you saying, I can't figure this out, or, and I was thinking, this word power, we're using. What is this? What is it? And the word that suddenly arrived, and especially when you talked about the victim narrative, is awareness. The energy, wherever you put the energy, wherever you put the awareness, that's what you're giving it power to. Right? If I'm giving that awareness to my victim, that's what gets the power.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that then becomes stronger,
right.
right?
So I have a certain amount of energy, and I can choose where I put it. I can put it into being victim, or I can choose into healing. And when I healed enough, can I go and help others?
Yeah.
No?
And strength you're getting is from where you put that amount of awareness and energy, into which part of your being, of your narrative, of your, whether it is with, and takes it back to intention, right? If my intention is eventually to have that ability to influence my mind, and to recognize that I have the ability to heal, right? And then to act in accordance with that which is power, right? And
right?
then to influence, that somehow changes just the relationship with power itself,
Yes.
right?
I'm going to share something. One of the most one of the most powerful things that I've seen helping people do this change in consultations
Mm,
from somebody who has been a victim and they feel like a victim to somebody who feels empowered to do changes. We mentioned a few episodes back where we were talking about forgiveness and
mm,
how you have to recognize, accept, and agree. And the agreement sometimes is really difficult because how can I agree that that happened? And if I could go back in my life, I would take it off. I would not go again through all that. How can I agree to that? Well, one of the key things that I've observed that helps a lot of people to do that transition is to see everything that happened. Because anyway, you cannot change it. That happened already. But you can choose, that's your power, to change how you see it and see that as a training. What? Yeah, as a training. What you went through is a training to prepare you to be able to help others who are going through the same situation. And when you do that, you change from passion in the traditional classical meaning of the word, pain,
pain.
to compassion.
Mm,
So, oh, everything that's happened to my life, oh my God, how difficult. Oh, look at where I am. Look at what my mother or my father did for me, and blah, 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 blah. And you take all that and say, well, you know what? You have been in training and now you've done some work, and now maybe you are doing yoga, or maybe you are doing whatever. You are learning things, you are becoming more aware, more conscious, and you know what, there's so many people who suffer the same as you. They went through the same. Who could help them but somebody who knows what this is? Now you've been through that, you are coming out of that, and who is better prepared to help people like that? And just to stop thinking about their problem and start thinking, well, how can I serve others? How can I help others? Is like the transition from student to teacher or from client to therapist. And so many people who go through these traumas then transition and eventually become sometimes excellent therapists because they know everything that's happening within the others. So that it's a combination of this compassion, so stop feeling about my issues, but
mm,
having a wider compassion. You know what, you're not the only one who's suffering. Look at all these other people. Oh, okay, I'm not alone, right? Oh, okay, so, and how can I help? How can I serve? No, the heart opens. How can I serve the others? And then you stop thinking about your own problems. And if
mm.
whenever you look at them, you see them in a different light, and you understand, okay, maybe I did go through a training. Okay, I graduated from the Academy of Pain and Suffering, right? Now maybe I'm a PhD in that. Can I now utilize my skills, please? And that means having an influence.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that comes back so interestingly, when you were talking, I was thinking about when you talked about that and you moved physically from left to right, which is really about a perspective shift and a whole shift
Right.
from me and my suffering to a larger, I don't want to use the word cause, but a greater, something greater than the I,
Yeah.
and how that I or that suffering can feed the understanding and the intelligence of what you then serve to the greater good.
Yes.
And that's again using the power to influence what you have experienced uh, for something bigger. And I don't, again, don't want to use the word bigger, but for something beyond the I, beyond, because otherwise then we're stuck in the loop of that story
Right.
versus making, and I think it takes me back to the book by Viktor Frankl on Man's Search for Meaning,
Hmm.
right? Which is what he was talking about, that we're all trying to find meaning and purpose in all of what is occurring and his own journey. I'm sure you've read that book, Ardaas.
No.
Okay, so he's it's a book about this gentleman who was a prisoner in the Nazi concentration camp, and he was a psychiatrist. And when he came out of this very harrowing experience, he wrote a book, and he became a therapist psychologist, and he started his own form of therapy called logotherapy. He said the ultimate test for us all is to find meaning in our lives, right? And it's within the power of everyone to find that meaning and that purpose, regardless of your health or your circumstances, no matter how miserable or dire. Everyone has the power to find that calling, or that influence that you can have greater than the I. And that was his journey from, why did I survive the Holocaust? Why did I survive those concentration camps? Why am I here? And so many times you hear those conversations. Why am I here? And you're trying to make sense and meaning of it. And that's the nature of the mind, right? Um, and that really brought me to that, when you were making that shift of yes, this is this, but when you make that shift, what else is possible, right? You're including something called possibility.
Yes. There is this lovely exercise that we do in yoga sometimes, and it's an exercise for finding meaning in life.
Mm,
And you can say finding meaning, or finding a purpose, or finding your calling or your destiny. You can call it in a different ways. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of. And it's a question. And the question that we give them is, on the day that you're going to die, on
mm,
your deathbed, what has to have happened? What should you have done so that you can live in peace?
mm,
Okay. And that's a question to reflect upon, and we give them like 5 minutes. We generally do a meditation before, and then we put them in groups and to talk about it. This is a topic connected to death, but it's very, finding meaning in life. You will see it also connected to death.
yeah.
And then when they give the feedback, then we listened to what the people say. And it's very interesting because we can almost tell which are going to be real, fulfilling aims and calling and purpose, and which are going to be intellectually advanced and design and mentally beautiful, that they will say to somebody, this is my purpose, and it sounds very good, but it's not going to be fulfilling. And the difference between one and the other is those who are giving something back, right? Those who are giving something to others, those who are serving others and influencing others, that is going to make your life fulfilling. If you get at the end of your life and everything you did, even if it was like you set up some aims, this is the purpose of my life, and it meant a number of things that you accumulated in your life and things that are for you, things that I'm absorbing, taking. This is okay. When you are a child, yes, you have to take, you have to, and when you're a baby, they feed you. Yes, somebody has to give you things. When you're a little, you go to school and they give you education. Then, so there's the whole first period of life is about taking.
Mm,
But if you don't do this change at some point and start thinking about giving,
mm,
then you are not going to be fulfilled at the end of life. That's
mm,
why, for me, I made so much emphasis today in today's conversation about not thinking so much about my own inner power, about what can I change within me, because that's also looking at my navel. But yes, that's important. Yes, that's necessary. Absolutely. We have to go through that. But at some point, we're going to have to change and look out. And we're going to have to do this shift. And how can this serve others? Can I be an influence into that and allow myself to be an influence into others in that way? And if that component is integrated, if you into your drawing your mental image of where you are going in your life, if that image includes you giving something to others, that's much more likely to be fulfilling at the end.
yeah, the power to offer, right then.
Yes.
um, like you said, to only be taking, because then that's still I centric, and then that gets stuck in that loop of
And
of
you said it right. It's about offering, okay? It's not taking, but it's also not about, like you were saying before, coercing, controlling, and there was another forcing, right? Is yeah, you offer something, you put it there, and then you say whoever wants to take it, they can take it, and they don't want to take it, they don't have to take it. But but yeah, that offering.
yeah, and that's the quality I think that it has great power to be for it to be an offering without it being controlling, compulsive, and forcing. Like you have to take what I want you to take because
Yes, yes,
because in that there is no attachment or agenda or um, a charge. Yeah, it's an offering. It's an
yeah,
invitation. It's and it's your choice in that to then come in and make that choice, and then you're not taking away the power from somebody else to make that choice.
correct. And that's the key.
Yeah.
In your allowing yourself to utilize your power outside to help others, to serve others, and that has an influence, in that you are not taking away their own power. It's actually empowering them as well. No, it's like a flow. It's like um, influence is this flow, fluence, right? It's fluidity. So you are charging yourself like a cup.
Mm.
And when the cup is full, so I empower myself to change my habits, to change my mind, to change my emotions, to change how I relate to myself. And when the cup is full, I don't have to give to anyone. It's just overflowing and it's right there, and anybody can drink from it. So anybody can benefit from that. But you don't force it upon anyone, and you don't take anyone's source as well, anyone's energy as well in doing that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And in recognizing that you're inherently respecting, and power comes with that respect and responsibility and equality of looking at the other as an equal power. And then that
yes.
dynamic is no longer power over anymore. It is like I don't know if I'm making sense, but like, yeah, that dynamic shifts. Then I am
Yes,
looking at you.
but don't, I mean, at the same time recognize there is a difference in power until that happens. Okay, when a client comes to you for consultation, there is a difference in power. You have power because the words that you say are going to have an incredible impact on the other person. It's like when somebody goes to a doctor and they see the white clothes and they are going to be impacted. Or
Mm,
a policeman, we go to a policeman in the street, they have an inherent power. There is a difference in power. They can put you in prison, right? You cannot put them in prison. So there is a difference in power. We shouldn't just naively think that we are all equal. That's perfectly, and we are all the same. We're all equal. Well, yes, there is equality in certain areas, and there's equality of rights, and there is equality of everybody has their own right to think in whatever they want. There's a number of equalities that are things, but in terms of power, there is going to be an imbalance until it doesn't, right?
mm.
So the client comes to you, and when they come, they have an imbalance, and whatever you say is going to have an incredible impact. And someday they're going to realize, you know what? That pain I went through, that was a training. Now I can go and serve others. Now they become the psychologist or
Yeah.
the therapist or whatever, or the yogi or whatever they become. Now they took their own power. And now we have a different level, different relationship. And now we can talk to each other like sisters, like brothers, right? Not like client and teacher or consultant. But we shouldn't be afraid to see that there are imbalances of power as well. And it's okay.
And I think it's really important to recognize that, because in that naivete we may end up either exploiting, abusing, and becoming powerless if we're not holding that polarity and paradox,
Yes,
in our vision.
correct. Correct.
But something that really brought me back to one of our previous podcasts about the power of influence of words, how we use them, um, and and really, really becoming aware of that in every moment. right? The consciousness of the power, that there's always power present, even from that place of the belief and perception that I'm powerless,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
right? And that when we can become conscious and aware of that, then that's the paradigm shift.
Yes.
Because then otherwise, I'm not taking responsibility for those actions and choices and accountability. And that feeds into this loop of powerlessness and karmic versus dharmic and fate and destiny, right? Uh, that life is just happening to me versus, right, which you had also, you mentioned maybe a couple of minutes ago or as well, to becoming consciously aware of the power that I influence in the way I see myself, in the words that I use with myself, and therefore the words that I use to influence in this situation to another, and being consciously aware of that we hold inherently as human beings, um, and with the awareness of the paradox that exists and the imbalances that exist. Because all of I think this one is tying in all of the previous things. It's a sound.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
and and the previous podcasts too.
sorry.
And the previous podcast, because we are connecting to the karma. There was
Yeah,
karma of actions and words and thoughts, and the relationship to our words, and our words have power. So choosing to carefully be conscious of the words that we pronounce, because they have power, and they have power over our mind as well, and our emotions, how we describe it. Yeah, 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 it's all connecting.
yeah. Like it almost seems like all of them are coming together, and therefore the truth is that there is power inherent within all of us, and if you're
Yes.
conscious of that, we can have the ability to direct that power, right? Which is similar to, I think, in Kundalini, you either allow that energy to be all over, or you then harness it and take it up to consciously, right? It's a harnessing it consciousness, the power, and how you want to utilize it and direct it towards something greater and bigger. And I see you smiling there. So
Yes, it's quite significant, no, that we in Kundalini yoga, we say Kundalini is like a latent energy. It's asleep in the base of the spine, and it wants to wake up. It's just waiting for us to be ready. And the word is called Kundalini Shakti, and Shakti means power, literally. So as the Kundalini wakes up, you experience your own power, and you gather your own power, and you allow the power to rise. And what we say is that when this energy wakes up, and remember, this is about power, but it's also about consciousness, because it's linked between
mm,
consciousness and power. Kundalini is consciousness. So when this Kundalini energy wakes up and reaches the crown, that's when we say that you touch enlightenment.
mm,
So how interesting. And then it has to solidify and come down to the heart, and that's when you come to liberation. The two different states, very similar, but actually quite different. Well, how interesting that the way, in this perspective, that yoga defines the final objective. I'm not talking the objective of one life, which is our purpose, and that's pretty nice, but that's one life. We're talking over all the lifetimes. The final objective of you is to realize yourself and to liberate, to be liberated. Well, that liberation comes from the awakening of your own inner power.
mm,
So without that, you cannot get there. And maybe you practice a different style of yoga or a different spiritual path, and maybe they will not talk about the Kundalini per se in these words, but that's from the yogic perspective what happens in them. So even a saint who gets enlightened, the saint will not speak about what's happening within, but from
mm.
the yogic perspective, they got enlightened because the energy got to the crown. So we talk about how this power awakens. So could it be that power has a major influence on whether we can go to this light, enlightenment, and whether we can liberate ourselves?
That's a very interesting
Mm.
question that you have asked. And while you were saying that, um, it's put me actually into a place of silence.
Right. we say that this energy rises through the central channel, which is called Shushumna,
Mm.
and it makes the sound of sh, like silence, sh. So it's significant.
Is significant because something that really sat like literally for me in that moment is this power, which they say Shiva, right? Shakti is, and when the Shakti rises in consciousness and you awaken to your power and you're conscious of your power and your ability to create from that space. And that creative power is all creation, right?
Yes, so we say Shakti is the power,
Mm.
and Shiva is
Consciousness,
the
right?
this primary intelligence. We can call it God if you wish. So our own inner Shakti merges with Shiva.
Mm.
So there is drawings in, or sculptures with carvings of Shiva and Shakti making love.
Mm.
And the meaning behind that is that we need to wake up our own Shakti, our own power, and to join with God's will, yeah, God's power. And that union is what is going to bring us to the liberation. But it's very significant that Shakti means power, and it meets Shiva, the Lord.
Mm.
And we were just started this talk today defining power coming from the etymology was coming from the PIE root, the Proto-Indo-European of the word for Lord.
Yeah.
So is power important? Power is supremely important.
Yeah.
So knowing how important are our words and the power we give to the words, we should be careful to now, next time we say, well, power corrupts. Yes, but don't take it as a negative to try to then avoid power. All
Mm.
right, power corrupts. Well, that's one thing you can do. Then let's be conscious and aware, not afraid, but conscious and aware and careful maybe that we don't go that path, but not out of fear of being corrupt. I'm going to stop taking my power. Because then who is going to take the power? Those who are not be afraid of being corrupt. There
Yeah.
should be more yogis politicians and more yogis bankers and more,
Yes, I agree.
But the thing is, you start doing yoga and you just want to meditate and you want to, have a more peaceful life and calm life. But, if anybody has the calling, they should go into politics. They should go into the positions of power in the government and, yeah, take influence, make the right influence in the world. Definitely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And psychologists, lots of psychologists.
Yes. Yes. And I think while you're saying that, I'm gonna just land this with a closing thought, and of course, if you have more thoughts after, is, and I'm gonna say this while it sounds more spiritual. I think psychology is a study of the soul, right? That's where we began in our first podcast. Is that when we don't exercise the power because of the fear of corruption, then are we fully exercising the reason we were born? Our influence on the world as a soul and the expression of who we are in this life and why we came here and, to share gifts and, you know, um, then are we doing that? And I'm wondering if that's just a thought and a question to really leave here in this space.
Excellent. Let's leave them with this question. And also, if they want to do the exercise about the deathbed, being on the deathbed, I encourage anyone to do it. And if you want to, share it with us, whatever you come up with, just feel free to write it down in the comments on the videos or write us an email. Can you tell us, Satseva, again? Tell us where can they contact us?
Can send it to us at admin@safe-space.in. We would be really happy to um, hear from you, have you interact with us, and share with us what your thoughts are. But before we close, may I ask Ardaas ji to reshare what that exercise was?
Yes, you ask yourself on the day of my death. So when I'm on my deathbed before I go, what will have had to happen? What should I do in my life? What do I need to accomplish in my life that I can go in peace?
Mm.
That's the question. And reflect upon that. And then when you finish reflecting upon that, ask yourself if that answer is aligned with giving something back to the world, or
Mhm.
is just a selfish thing about something you, I will not leave this planet in peace until I am, the boss of my own company. Well, that's about you and your company, but what are you giving back, or what are you offering? Well, then I have an incredible company with 400 families being sustained from the work that we do. Okay, that's something else you're giving to the families, right? But just the focus that you give to the answer is going to tell you whether that's something that it can be fulfilling or not. When you the day that we reach that deathbed, because someday will come. So
Yeah.
to be ready to be able to go in peace.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that very profound question that allows us to look back at our life and look at where we are and where we want, give more meaning and direction to the lives that we have and the time that we have. Um,
Thank
and
you, Satseva, for your contribution to the conversation as well.
yeah. And so we look forward to all of you. We hope you can join us more and interact with us more. We are here every Friday, 5:30 p.m. India time and 1 p.m. Portugal time. Thank you so much for
12 p.m. now, because we are in the winter schedule now.
12 p.m. Portugal time. Thank you so much.
And then thank you.